Welcome to Nudge and Boost for Better Living with Dr. Bob Crow. The purpose of this series of broadcasts is to share proven strategies you can use to build happier and more successful living at home, work, play, everywhere, all the time. And now your host, Dr. Bob Crow.
Hi, this is Dr. Bob Crow. Hope this is a good day for you. I know tonight and tomorrow can be made better by applying information offered in this series of broadcasts. My background is applying the science of behavior to promote learning and successes. I worked in public schools, headed behavioral resource centers, and led state and national efforts aimed at enhancing human development. This show is designed to share rules of behavior science along with sensible lessons of life in ways you can use. In this series, I talk through selected topics, but want you to do selected actions to make your life more positive and, I believe, more successful. I'll start today with a review of the basic principles that is being promoted on this series of shows. And then let's review Nudge and Boost and certain principles related to them. A nudge happens before behavior and indicates what you are to do or even not do. We are emphasizing do's, that is, nudges followed by boosts. Among the nudges you might see in your daily life are things like a doorknob, which you've heard about a number of times in this series of shows because it's so clear and prominent in our environments, and it lends itself to analysis. Doorknobs are so strange, sometimes they really are clear about indicating what behavior to do, and sometimes they are not. So that's why I use them, and they appear in the literature so much. Other nudges that are common in our environment, or at least should be, are books. Books, by their cover and attractive wording on the front, are nudges to pick them up and take a look, see what the content is, and if it seems attractive, to actually read it. And of course, every word on every page is a nudge for a response on your part of a word. You might read that word out loud, or you might just have it in your brain, and that is called reading. Another frequent nudge that all of us are experiencing, but might not think about it, are models of behavior shown by others. A model of behavior, like an excellence in reading and pronunciation of words. The teacher, for example, might present a model of reading a passage out of a book. Or people walking down the street might present a model of behaving cheerfully in a community setting. We are all experiencing models of behavior all the time, and they're very important nudges that we should both be aware of and use systematically. For example, if you want your child to show the good attitude or excitement about learning and studying, or an interest in nature, then you can model interest. Look at that insect in its antennae. What are you doing about studying tonight? You can nudge behaviors that you appreciate with a model of enthusiasm or action on your part. And of course, the emphasis of my book and this show is the fact that the events following behavior, the consequences of behavior, affect whether they will increase in future probability or decrease. That is, consequences build or diminish the behaviors that produce them. Now, one class of consequences that I'm advocating for the wide use of boosts. That's not a term you find in behavior science, but it relates to the consequences that strengthen behavior. And I mentioned before, a boost may be the presentation of a positive thing or the removal of an ongoing negative thing. You can help someone out of a difficult situation for a behavior that they show, for example, like requesting your assistance. The behavior of requesting is followed by your assistance that makes their life more positive. And they probably thank you for doing it, And if they do it in a genuine and positive way that affects you, then they are boosting your behavior, helping them. Now, I'm advocating that all of us recognize that bounding behavior, that is, on the preceding and following aspects of any behavior, are nudges and boosts. So you have a sandwich there. You have a nudge and boost sandwich where a behavior occurs after a nudge and is followed by, I'm promoting boost. Well, you build those sandwiches. That's what this show is about. That you should decide on what is the filling of the sandwich. What behavior do you want? What's a desirable behavior? You want more respect. You want better social skills, good study habits, reliability, friendliness. These are labels. They aren't behaviors. If you want somebody to show the good attitude, then you have to think about what is a good attitude. Smiling, answering in a constructive way, showing a decent posture and expression, and doing the job in a high quality way are examples of behaviors that can be measured, and they reach the outcome that you wish to see, in this case called good attitude. Well, for all those behaviors that sum to being a good attitude, you need to provide nudges and boosts for those behaviors, to get them and to build their strengths. So maybe you don't have any behavior problems right now, that around you, your children and spouse and coworkers generally behave in ways that are not problematic to you. You're not thinking, I need to find ways to eliminate this or that kind of behavior. Well, you're in an unusually fortunate situation, and I'm happy for you. In that situation, you can use something we've talked about a little bit before, called incidental teaching. So in incidental teaching, you're just watching for a behavior you've already thought of as desirable. And when it occurs, you follow it with some kind of boost that you probably have thought about. So you watch your kids and see if they're playing better together. And if they are, you say, hey, I like the way you're playing together. So that might be an example of incidental teaching. And it doesn't have to be kids playing together. It can be coworkers in the office. We happen to notice that they cleaned up the kitchen a little bit after they had lunch. And you say, hey, thanks for cleaning it up. So that's an opportunity you saw that incidentally happened, and you can incidentally provide a boost. I'm advocating you and everyone to use a behavior logical strategy, as have been mentioned many times in this show, and just outlined a bit above, found in my book, of course, as tools that you can use with great confidence to make your life more positive and successful. I tell the readers of my book, at the end of having read it and hopefully absorb some of it, that they are in the behavioral 1%, which I think is true. Very few people systematically look at behavior. The notion of nudging is fairly popular, but not pervasive. And my notion that I'm sharing with you in these shows, to look at your world around you and act as though there are nudges for behavior and boosts that strengthen them. If you're actually applying that script to building your own behaviors and others, and understanding that what you're seeing around you are behaviors that are brought about by the antecedents to them that I'm calling nudge, and are strengthened or weakened by the consequences that follow them, and I'm calling the strengthening ones boosts, then you are in, I'm saying, behavioral 1%. Almost no one talks that way, and no one acts that way. One of the beauties of having these strengths of strategies, of looking at behaviors around you and your own, recognizing that comes before it and after it is changing it, is that you can use this behavioral logical evaluation to critique behavioral practices. For example, you might see in your neighborhood a parent who's trying to deal with some not desirable behaviors. You should recognize by now that really the neighbor should be trying to build desirable behaviors. You may go to your child's classroom, to see how it's going. And you may see that there are some boosts, but not very many, and quite a few negative comments. You know by reading the book or listening to the show that really the classroom should show many more boosts for desirable behaviors on the part of kids, and probably eliminate the negatives altogether by emphasizing the behaviors that are desired rather than those that are undesired and getting the negative attention. You may be motivated to seek services or seek a book or ask for advice. You may wonder about the quality of those comments and services that you're looking into to meet your needs. And I'm suggesting you should apply behavior logical strategies to looking at these matters and resources, and in fact all others. For example, you might look at a self-help book, there are many of them, or topical books, or quote behavioral services, to see how well they relate to the nudges and boost strategies that I've been sharing with you. Often you'll read a book and it's very motivational about doing something, make your life pleasant or solve global warming or something. But when you read it from a nudge and boost perspective, it really doesn't describe behaviors that you should do, and then it's motivational but not prescriptive. Sometimes you see in a newspaper or in a book promises that something is behavioral, and because you were schooled a little bit in the science of behavior and good sense strategies for applying them, you might see something like is in our local newspaper this morning. And the headline reads, "Program targets behavioral issues," unquote. That attracted my eye, of course, and I looked into it. And from the description in the newspaper, there are interesting clues to whether or not it's behavioral and whether or not you would be interested in looking into it more if you had need or if you wanted to support it in some way. The program is called SNAP, the Stop Now and Plan program. It targets boys primarily, and it's available as a service, behavioral health service. The person they interviewed states that we are trying to break up cognitive disorientation, and our goal is to help kids stay in school and help families make their problems smaller, not bigger. How can you argue with that? So far, it's sounding very positive. They're speaking of improved social skills, and the program is designed to curb negative behaviors. Further positive comment in the article is that it's been around 28 years. It's free, which is a highly desirable feature. It has 5 components. And those components include teaching self-control, problem solving, and how to regulate emotions. Very desirable targets. There is a parenting group that teaches effective child management strategies, family counseling, and individual counseling and mentoring. Further, it has a component of teacher support that is very attractive in tutoring. The suggestions by those titles is that this is an excellent program that should be looked into if one has needs, behavioral needs, or support if one is interested in supporting behavioral programs. So it's time for a break.
I do believe in you, and I know you believe in me. Oh yeah, oh yeah. But now we've realized love's not all that it's supposed to be. Oh yeah,
We are back, and we are Dr. Bob Crow, and on the left, Quincy, who asked me questions that I love to hear.
My next question is, you talk a lot about change and people changing their previous habits. Is it difficult using nudge and boost, or is it difficult to see the results of long-lasting change with nudge and boost, and not just short-term behavior change?
Excellent question, thank you. There are two ways to think about it, it seems to me. One is behavior is continuous, everyone's behaving all the time, and they're being nudged and boosted. So if you insert into that stream of nudging and boosting, and of course I pointed out everyone's under certain motivational circumstances too. So assuming that your interventions are somewhat responsive to the motivational status of the individual, like they're looking for improved performance in sports, or they would like to be a better student, or they would like to exercise more and be more fit. And motivations are operating on them, and the interventions that you're helping with, the nudges and boosts that you're helping with, are improving their performance with regard to satisfying their motives. Then you're almost certainly working toward a long-term building of strengths and continuing success for that person. So even though the short term might be to help them out some, the long term is that you helped with establishing some skills that are probably going to be successful for a long period of time. So the view might be long, but it need not be. If the skills that are being developed are good for life, like problem solving or social skills, then you can assume that it's going to have a long-term effect. A second feature of addressing that question, though, is how the environment is programmed after the intervention. Establishing skills is one thing, maintaining and generalizing them, is the way you talk in behavior science, is another. And those things are programmable. You can move nudges, more or less, into other environments so that the behavior is encouraged to occur elsewhere. For example, social skills. You might have established social skills for someone at home, and you might go to a dance or into the community setting somewhere and apply those same kind of nudges to assist them in moving their skills from where they were learned into where they're used. If the environment in which they're using them supports those kind of behaviors, like social skills are boosted, then that new environment takes on influence on those behaviors, and they persist. And those strategies are known in behavior science. They're mentioned in the book. Chapter 11 is devoted to identifying and building better nudges and better boosts and working toward short-term and long-term positive outcomes.
Okay, we're in a fix-it-now society. How long will you, when you start using nudge and boost, how long will it take before you actually start seeing results?
Well, you have this skill at asking very difficult questions. They're good questions. Thank you. Under many circumstances, the effects of organized nudging and boosting would be nearly immediate, maybe immediate. For example, one of the styles of nudging that you might use could be to model something. For some reason, I'm thinking about social skills today, or maybe reading, being a fluent reader. You can, or someone can, show those skills, model them, and then say, your turn. For example, in very early reading instruction, you can put your finger under the letter C, and say, my turn, and then say, and take your finger away from the C, and then as you're putting it back onto the C, you say to the child, your turn, and put your finger under the C. If they don't imitate, that would be a surprise. Probably they will say, and then almost instantaneously have gone from a child who doesn't make the k sound in the presence of a C to making the sound of k in the presence of a C.
Okay, let's do a little role playing. I am having a bad day today. Nudge and boost me.
Well, I think you should just step out into the hallway.
That'll work, huh?
Again, a nice question. And it would work for me if you're not smiling and you're unpleasant. Step out. I can model.
Mm-hmm.
Say, I don't know what you say to nudge me, but to recognize that you're in a bad mood. But you say, I'm in a bad mood today.
Would you ask me what's wrong?
Yeah. Well, you were going to say something, Eric. You're going to say, I'm in a bad mood today.
Okay.
And I might say, too bad, what's wrong? And
Okay.
you say, well, I've got a parking ticket. And maybe you can defuse the parking ticket some and says, well, maybe you should park better. I'd laugh it up some.
At least legal, right?
But point out that you usually don't. You say, you park regularly. I'm no, because I'm up next to you.
Yeah.
So this is an unusual circumstance that you got a ticket. And you're usually reliable, blah, blah. You can emphasize, the point is, to find ways to model finding positive circumstances around you. Look, yeah, you got a ticket, but look how pretty it is. You can hear the cicada clicking in the trees, and look at those flowers out front. Life isn't that bad. Maybe we could go to lunch later if you cheer up some.
Okay. Now, I have a technique that seems to work for me when I'm having a bad day. Tell me if I'm nudging and boosting myself, okay? If I'm having a bad day, I try to consciously realize, okay, things are going the wrong direction. I'm about to get out of bed and hit that wall. So I decide to regroup and go back to bed, at least 15, 20 minutes if I can, and get up and start my day over again. And that seems to work. Am I nudging and boosting myself?
Absolutely. Yes. And we do that all the time. And the nice feature of you're asking the question and being on this topic for a while, it's a model for others to say, recognizing your own performance in the day.
Mm-hmm.
You turned over and said, hey, this isn't working right now. So restart is what you call it, fine.
Like a
so
computer.
you go back and, yeah, I don't know where you get the 15 minutes to sleep in, but that's nice.
Take the time.
Yes. So yes, you've developed a strategy. Apparently, this is a recurring challenge to you that includes a self-instruction, a nudge to yourself, and you must be finding that by doing that, the day does start out better. That's the boost for it. So if you find that strategy, anyone finds a strategy that they develop that does not yield behaviors that are boosted, then you should look around and say, what else can I do? How can I better nudge myself, structure this situation so that I do behaviors that are better for me, are boosted?
Since I've known you, you've always been in a positive way. How do you nudge and boost yourself?
Pretty much like I have been talking about. I say to myself and believe, life is good. It really is.
I agree.
If looking at high taxes and the strife in politics and the crummy performance of Congress and our supposed leaders don't lead, we can get really down on the dumps. But you can set that aside. You can have simultaneous tracks. You can do a responsible job of behaving in the political environment and in discourse with others. At the same time, you're conducting your own personal business and your interpersonal social business in positive ways. Life is good. Now, if you say politics is crummy and you let that be the only track of your life that you look at, then you're emphasizing the negative. I'd rather emphasize the positive. I'm doing what I can about politics, and it's stumbling badly along, and that's really unfortunate. And I'd like to find opportunities to contribute better. But with my family life and my personal life and success in things like dealing with this book, I'm happy. Life is predominantly very good.
So how do you deal with those naysayers?
It's about the book and science kind of thing is really difficult. And I figure that if a person rejects behavior science as a way to improve their life, then I haven't done an adequate job of illustrating and communicating, informing, and guiding the use of those principles. It's very difficult. This is a talk show. It's not a do show. That really, and I've said a few times, it's nice if people listen and hear that there are nudges and boosts, but the point is to do it. So I want people to go home and do it. Just sit there with the consequence box or sit there with a piece of paper and note how many times did I say something positive? How many times did I say something negative? And say, wow, I say too many negatives. I should, according to Dr. Bob in the book, I should look for more positive behaviors I want, desired behaviors, and boost them. And be nice to take data to mark how many times, say, undesirable behavior happens during the day of someone, and how many desirables that you'd prefer are happening. So maybe you see you get 10 bad social contacts and 1 positive social contact. Well, you boost the 1 social. You can ignore the 10 undesirable social contacts of that person.
I have a question. How should a person read your book to get the biggest benefits from it?
Read it closely, I think, and as you're reading it, to relate it to your own life. I'd like you to be thinking about, what does this mean for me? I'd like to have a person feel, as they're reading the book, that this relates to them, it's important for them, and that they can do it. So you have think about what you're reading, feel some confidence building and some skill building, and then do. So the final chapter, chapter 11, is oriented toward doing. It really describes in various perspectives how to do the things that have been described in the book. So read it with an eye toward, what does this mean to me? And read it with an eye toward, you are building more confidence to make your life more positive and successful, and do it. And there's a lot of emphasis in the book about the difference between thinking and doing. And I'm trying to encourage you to do.
I'm really excited about your book. It's time we should tell folks how to get a copy of your book. The title and a copy.
The title is Nudge and Boost for Better Living. And it's by Robert Crow, of course, and it's available on Amazon. Everybody should know how to get to Amazon and buy a book by now.
Yeah.
But I appreciate, that's a boost for me to see sales up. But the point is, really, my motivation for this is primarily, and this show, of course, to get people to understand a little bit more about behavior science and how it's in their everyday life, every minute, and to do some things with that new knowledge that causes them to have a more positive and successful life. You can do it.
Now is the time. Now is the time for all good men to get together with one another, iron out their problems and iron out their quarrels, and try to live as brothers, and try to find peace within without stepping on one another, and do respect of the women of the world. Just remember we all had mothers.
Make this land a better land in the world in which we live.
And help each man be a better man with the kindness that you give. And I know we can make it.
I know that we can.
I know done well we can work it out.
Oh yes we can. I know we can. Yes we can. Why can't we if we wanna? Yes we can.
I know we can make it work.
I know that we can.
I know we can make it if we try.
Oh yes we can. I know we can. Yes we can. Great gosh almighty. Yes we can. I know we can.
Welcome back. Quincy's going to ask me telling questions again, which I appreciate very much.
I've heard you talk about it a couple of times, and I'm trying to find out what you mean by draining the swamp. What is the swamp?
Good question. We are in Gainesville, Florida, for those who aren't aware. And the swamp is a football stadium that's to my left a little ways. That's one swamp. And the poor opposing teams that come in there to try to deal with the Gators, they're not going to get a whole lot of boosts, but they're sure going to be nudged all over the place. Football season is near, and it's very promising. The other more generally recognized view of a swamp is Washington, D.C., which was built on a swamp. And it behaves, its members behave like they're still in one. That the swamp is, I think, is a label that a lot of people are using for a situation of poor performance that sucks people into it so they don't do what we wish they would do.
The only problem with draining the swamp, you know what you have after you drain the swamp, don't you? Mud.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should build rafts or a platform. That is a very important. I'm glad you raised that topic. One of the emphases you've heard many times is we should be looking for what we want, not what we don't want. You don't want your child to stop hitting. You want the child to behave interpersonally pleasant. And yes, you want the hitting to go away, but your aim is for better social skills. Our aim is not exactly to drain the swamp, is to get the swamp members, the animals in the swamp, to behave well. So now I say things, I talk like that, behave well. Other people don't talk like that. Well, the 1% who read my book, I hope, talk like that. So they would say, to drain the swamp in Washington, we just need to decide what behaviors we want, not what behaviors we're trying to get rid of. Now, because it's a big picture, the behaviors that we want are those, I believe, that fit into a process of many behaviors that result in outcomes that are favorable for us, like healthcare. I haven't heard any real discussion about what outcomes, what values that we're working toward. It'd be nice, once those are clarified, what do we want? I think we want every person to be healthy in the United States. Now, how they achieve that is very interesting. They could achieve it by eating better, by exercising more. And that is not necessarily in the healthcare system. Mm-hmm. But the overview, the big picture that the swamp members might think about, should act constructively about, is how to get people in our country to do the behaviors that cause them to be healthy. Now, you go in the doggone grocery store and you see cereal with 13, 14, 16, 18 grams of sugar in a serving. If you eat that, 2 bowls of that high sugar cereal makes you starve. 4 bowls make you fuller, starvinger. It's not nutritionally reasonable. But there's not instruction in the store about, here's what's wrong with this, here's how to select cereals that don't make you so hungry and do improve your nutritional status. So the whole country should be, and its institutions should be programmed in ways that nudge and boost people for acting more in sound, healthful ways. Now, part of the picture is causing people to go to the doctor or somewhere, health professionals, so that the ills that they have are taken care of. It'd be better if they didn't have to go. So if you don't eat so much sugar, you don't have to go in and be treated for diabetes, for example. And obviously I'm saying very superficial comments about very complicated matters. But the big picture should be looking at the outcomes we want. People who are healthy and can have health care, treatment, if they need it. How do we achieve it? Well, I'm saying nudging and boosting does it. That we need to have an environment in which people are nudged to exercise, to buy better food, to cook it better, and nudged to get early preventive medical care, and then to participate well when they're getting medical care, like following the intervention regimes, the treatment regimes that are prescribed. Now, the focus is on who pays for it. Well, that's interesting, but the outcomes in the process are the point. Later, we can talk about the costs and there's of healthcare and what to do about them. Certainly, pharmaceuticals are expensive and blah, blah, blah. I think the primary issue is the nudges and boosts that the swamp members get. They have a huge insurance industry that has to make a profit. That means that funds that are given to them that later are supposed to support healthcare have to be consumed by overhead and profit. If we took out the overhead and profit, then you'd have only the costs of healthcare. I don't know what those are. But let's say the healthcare costs for everyone in the country, if they got all the healthcare they needed, is $100 billion or $100 trillion, whatever, some units, 100 units, is how much it costs to provide that care. Right now, though, the costs of doing it are 3 times that because of the overhead and the transfers of funds and stuff. So we should, I'm arguing that we should work back from the outcomes we want, identify the processes, behaviors that yield the desirable health status, and build our systems so there are nudges and boosts from the individual level into the systems level. Now, the topic is draining the swamp, and the swamp members are those who can do something about our healthcare system or anything else that they're addressing, the drug war and foreign aid and all that stuff. They are nudged in certain ways that their constituents say, hey, can't we get some help with highway funds? Their fellow Congress members say, if you vote for this, my bill, I'll vote for yours. Lobbyists say, if you vote for this bill or use this wording in this bill or add this amendment, I'll contribute big time to your campaign. So there are important nudges and boosts occurring to the people in Washington, and enough of them are not favorable for making the changes that would be good for our country. There may be a good number of nudges coming from constituents, let us say, or even from their own personal value system. But the boosts for doing the things that are good for us and adaptive for our country are probably largely lacking. I mentioned before that probably a way we could approach this to help our Congress people have boosts that are good for us and is to do collective fundraising. So you can go to your congressman and say, we desire this and we'll contribute $50,000 to your campaign if you do it.
Well, tell me something. Am I naive to think that Congress should think about Americans first before they think about foreign aid to any other country or the military machine? Because think about it. I'm paying taxes. I'm not going to get too on a soapbox here because it's kind of wild, man. I'm paying taxes, and I would like my taxes to be used for us first. Is wrong to think about that?
Well, that's perfect.
So
I'm sure.
So, okay, the people that
Immigration
in the swamp, the whole 9 yards
Yeah.
in the swamp, shouldn't they think about us first, and then if anything left, we'd try to help other folks? It's like me giving you all my money before I take care of my family.
I hear you. And probably everybody is on the same page. and I think a way to approach the whole issue that you're raising about why do we spend more or less, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's more or less, why are we putting all this money into stuff that doesn't affect my improved quality of life?
In America.
In America. That's a huge systemic problem to arrive at the answer. Let's assume that, and I think it's fair to assume that all those programs you mentioned, like military and foreign aid, are have already been determined to contribute to your or our security or improved commercial success, so we keep more jobs and make more exports, and that all the template applied to all those programs could be, and maybe at some time were, and maybe still are, how does this contribute to the quality of life of individuals living in the United States? So you take all of them. You could line them all up and say, does this contribute? Well, if the answer is, gosh, I don't know, then you better get more information. If it says, well, sure, and this is how. We haven't heard about it here. You and I, we're questioning it right now. We need more information. And I think that kind of a template might be helpful if people in general ask the swamp, tell us in measurable quality of life terms how all these programs contribute. And if they can't say that it's contributing in ways that are meaningful for us, then we ought to encourage them, ask, demand of them to alter the program or to drop it.
It stands to reason that if we have a healthy country, then everyone would benefit. So shouldn't the number one priority be making sure that America has the health care that it needs?
Yeah, I think I mentioned in an earlier show a list of quality of life fundamentals like safety, food safety, housing, education, and some others. So I don't think you could just focus on one, but a package. Work, income, and being respected for contributing, feeling as a valued, productive member of society are among the things that should be those everyone enjoys in this country.
So how do you nudge those folks to think that way? That'll boost me.
Well, one way it would boost me is everybody buy the book.
That'll work.
We need leadership.
Yeah.
And I think we have a lot of well-meaning people. I mean, there must be 1 million well-meaning people in and around the center of the swamp.
I haven't met them yet.
But the best of us...
Greedy people, yeah.
Yeah. There are motivational circumstances for everyone, including those in the swamp. And they have a certain repertoire of behaviors that include things like problem solving or strategic planning or program analysis sorts of skills. Probably varies from counterproductive to minimal. I'm reading a book now about Commander-in-Chief, that's FDR during World War II. It's really fascinating for how they address the problems that they do. But a primary feature in the success of the preparation conduct of the war were certain primary individuals who are strong and technically capable, like General Marshall and some others. There must be fine leaders someplace, and we should be able to recruit them. A problem in recruiting them is the motivational circumstances that occur when they start being identified.
Money.
You say, would you really like to go into government and your values questioned and your ability to make good decisions and carry them out thwarted? Now, if the situation was different, where if you go into government, you're likely to be able to succeed on your merits rather than being squashed by the social system, party system, and seniority system in Washington, we might be able to get better leaders. It's a multifaceted question, but it all boils down to what we've been talking about for all these shows: motivational circumstances, nudges, desired behaviors, and boosts. And we can arrange for better motivational circumstances. We can arrange for a better definition of the functional, desirable behaviors we want that lead to outcomes we want. And then we can nudge and boost for those behaviors. And it's simple and terribly difficult to do. But we're a lot better off if we know the tools and get started with tools that people don't generally know about. And I'm trying to push in this program and in the book. We are back, and as before, previous segments, we is Dr. Bob Crow and Quincy to my left. Normally in our show, the format calls for this segment, fourth segment, closing segment, for me to add some information about Nudge Boost that you haven't heard in previous shows. But we're on a roll here. and
To say the least.
Some of the questions that Quincy has on his mind, he's not satisfied that he's gotten there yet.
Well, okay, I'm not going to get on my soapbox this time either, okay? What do you see the future of Nudge and Boost? I think it's a great technique, and I think more people should at least try it. What do you think?
Let me pick up. A technique and everyone try it. Those comments deserve two answers. It's not a technique, it's a science. And it's a science that's impacting all of us all the time, like physics and biology, chemistry are. It's not just a casual approach to life. It's the ongoing forces that are molding our behaviors all the time. But science is content free. Physics doesn't say build bridges or build bombs. It says here are the laws of nature that tell us about leverage and momentum and so on. Now you use them any way you want. Well, behavior science is similar. It says here are the principles of science. This is how behaviors are increased and decreased. So the first notion is it's not a casual thing. And the second question is about whether everyone, how many people or something, how widespread should be the understanding of behavioral science that I'm condensing down to simple terms of Nudge and Boost. Well, everyone should. Every day, all of us are both affected by the principles and have the opportunity to use them. Every day, every moment, you're setting a model or you're providing differential consequences. You're saying, that's good or that's bad, and I appreciate this, or that I wish you would do better, or sit down and shut up, or thank you for helping clear the dishes. All those are boosts for certain behaviors that nudged the person to provide those consequences. We can solve problems like building bridges and inventing vaccines and dealing with behavioral problems. We can improve education. We can improve how we do foreign aid. We can improve how people treat their own bodies and become sick or not. We can improve social relations, criminal justice system. All of it is behaviors. Culture is behavior. We can use the Nudge and Boost, get tired of those terms, the principles of behavior science in ways that we have learned. So it isn't just knowing the principles, but using them correctly. The physicists, I'm saying, don't say build bombs or don't build bombs. They just say, here's how an explosion can occur under certain circumstances. That somebody can use that explosion to develop electricity or, in a stupid moment, eradicate a portion of humanity. We then have certain social structures that we can use to decide how we should use behavior science. Since behavior science is happening all the time, and it will continue to happen all the time, then the question isn't who uses it and for how long, it's how it's used, for what outcomes, by whom. The more the general population is aware of how contingent consequences build and alter behaviors, the more they're able to contribute to their own well-being and how other people perform, like the swamp members. It's the truth that swamp members are nudged and they do behave in certain ways, and they are boosted in the ways they behave, or they wouldn't do it. Their behaviors are strengthened by the boosts that follow them, and that might be admiration by a coworker or a constituent, or it might be a thank you in the form of a large check from a lobbyist. Well, we know that if we want the swamp members to behave in certain ways, we should tell them, here's the way we want you to perform towards certain outcomes, and make large boosts available for that. And that goes for everything we do. We can improve education, you can improve life at work and home. You can get better performance out of your workers if you're a leader or manager in an industry by explicitly using what is known by behavioral science, and I'm calling nudge and boost, as just easy to remember and say words. Behind them are the principles that behavioral science has developed over 100 years.
Does nudge and boost work better on males or females? There's really no difference.
No difference on anybody. The principles work the same. And remember, there are four terms that are the foundation, the fundamental features of behavior science, of motivational circumstance, an antecedent to behavior, and the consequences of it. So when you look at sex differences or age differences or something, it's likely, certain maybe, that motivational circumstances alter and the consequences that change behavior and the ability of the person to behave in certain ways alters. So if there's sex differences, it's probably that there are different motivations and different physical capacities and so on. But really, we should aim at the individual, the individual, because the individual sums to all we've got. So a culture is behaviors on a whole bunch of people's part. But every individual in that group learns those behaviors, and then their collective behaving and statement of values and preferences and activities defines culture.
So
And it's the individual nudge and boost.
So how does one decide what nudge and boost is best for themselves?
Say again?
So how does one person decide which direction I should go with this nudge and boost?
Well, good question. You ask these good questions. So how do you more or less develop a hierarchy of behavior, your individual behavior change that you should approach, given that you only have so much time and to design your life and so on?
Correct.
I think looking at your quality of life, saying this is what I would like to look like, financially, housing-wise, friend-wise, skill-wise. You can list those things on a piece of paper. They are usually going to be seen by you and others as outcomes. A house is an outcome, it isn't a behavior. But the behaviors that earn the house are behaviors, and the nudges and boosts that build those behaviors that result in the purchase and continuation, maintenance of a house, they're all affected by nudge and boost, of course.
Is there any social economic group that is using nudge and boost more than others now, or just everybody uses it?
It's you ask these wonderful, multifaceted questions.
Curious.
On the one hand, everyone uses the nudges boost all the time, every day. They just don't know it. Some particularly informed group, either informed by formal means like reading my book or maybe the nudge book or some others like the nurture effect. This is a good one. They are informed, so they're explicitly doing it. So it says, I know I'm nudging and boosting, and I have selected to nudge my child in this way, like to study, I keep saying that, and to boost in this way. So they're systematically, knowingly nudging and boost. Everyone on earth, every second, is always continuously nudging and boosting, assuming they're beyond just barely born and they're still not dead yet. Everyone, their whole life, is nudging and boosting others.
Okay, I know your primary focus is on this book. What is after nudge and boost for you? I know that this current book is your primary focus. After this book, what are your future plans? Have you decided on that yet?
Regarding boosting and nudging.
Or writing
gotta
boosting
find-
nudge number 2?
I have to find a way to say it less often. I'd like to promote this book as widely as I can. I wish everyone had a copy of and read it and took it to heart and did nudging, boosting in their own lives and with and for others to improve their and other people's quality of life. So I'd like to continue to promote through this book, and I have a Facebook page, Nudge and Boost, naturally, that informs and presents pictures, like of doorknobs, obviously. It illustrates nudges and talks about boosts. So I've got about 4 dozen posts on Facebook. So, then again, trying to promote a recognition and understanding that our behavior is affected by what comes before it and after it. So if you want to build behaviors, be specific about what you're trying to build and arrange nudges as boosts for it. This is so simple to say, difficult to do. But so book, speaking engagements, radio show, Facebook. The book has a website too. Many people are suggesting that I write a Reader's Digest Cracker Barrel version of Nudge and Boost, and I've been working on it. So I'll stay active. There's a library series that I've mentioned, and there's a little promo that's recorded that encourages people to go to the library, and I'll speak at the library series February 18th next year, 2:30, at the headquarters library down the street. So I'll do what I can. I'll encourage others. There are a large cadre of people called behavior analysts around our country, in some other world countries too. So I would do what I can to encourage them too. But that's about all I can as an individual do. I'm not wealthy, so I can't establish a foundation. But maybe a foundation like the Gates or the MacArthur Foundation or somebody, Pew or somebody, might pick it up and say, hey, this is what we've been looking for. The Gates Foundation, they claim that they want to improve education. So they do stuff like promoting the Common Core. Really? Is that the way to improve education? I think it's a very naive understanding of what the education process is. It's nudges boost for identified behaviors that are adaptive for the individual and our society and lead toward improved